In this video, let's clean up the layout of our main content section. Right now, notice how the buttons stack vertically, going all the way down the page where we need to scroll. Instead, we could use the Angular Material grid list to stack our button groups horizontally going across the screen in more of a grid format. This will give us more of a structured layout, and it'll eliminate the need to scroll so much. Before we implement anything, let's check out the Angular Material documentation. On the left, I have the grid list component selected. And under the overview, they have an example here, the basic grid list. We'll start off with this basic list to get us started. If we look at the code example, within the HTML, they're using this mat grid list as a container, and inside they have 4 separate tiles. We'll also be using 4 separate tiles within our project. They're using the columns and they have it set to 2 in this example. That means 2 grid tiles will stack horizontally, like it's currently doing here in this example. Then you can set a row height. In this case, they're using the ratio, the 2:1 ratio. That just means for every 2 units across the width, the tile will be 1 unit tall. So if the tile is like 200 pixels wide, it will be 100 pixels tall. You could use the ratio to set the height, or you could use a fixed height, like in this example here. We'll be setting that to a fixed height like 200 pixels, but you could also use the fit, or in this example, they're using the ratio. Before we can implement the HTML, we'll need to set up the TS file first. We'll copy this import here, and we'll import the mat grid list module into our dashboard TypeScript file. In most of the recent videos, we've been working within the pages component. Now we'll be working within the dashboard component, and we'll start off within the TypeScript file. And at the top, I'll bring in that snippet from the documentation, importing our mat grid list module. And then I'll make sure to add that within the components imports array. And that's the only change we need to make within our TypeScript file for now. Moving on to the HTML. And at the top, we'll add in our snippet. For now, we'll leave the default content just the way it is within the mat grid tiles. We won't add in the buttons yet. Let's make one change though. I'll change this to something like 100 pixels instead of using the ratio. We'll be changing this again in the future. Now let's update our style sheet. And then I'll add in another snippet from the documentation, from the CSS documentation, targeting all the mat grid tiles and setting it background to a light blue. This is temporary, and we'll be removing this in the next couple of videos. Let's see what this looks like in the browser. Now our grid in the browser has 2 columns, and each of our tiles are set to 100 pixels as we set it within the HTML. Now, not each of these tiles are going to have the same height. Like for example, the number 1 tile is going to have a height of, let's say, 200 pixels. In number 3, I want this tile height to be double of that of number 1. So if this is set at 200 pixels, I want number 3 to be 400 pixels. The reason for that is some of this button content is larger than others. Like for example, in tile 1, we're going to have the button colors and just these buttons. But tile 3, we're going to have the basic buttons, the flat buttons, and the stroke buttons. All these examples here, we'll have them within tile 3. So we'll need a larger height in tile 3. So how do we set 1 and 2 at 200 pixels and set row 3 and 4 at 400 pixels? Well, there's an example in the Angular Material documentation. Let's check that out. And then scroll up to the top until you see the tabs and select the examples. And this is the example that we're interested in. Notice the tile number 2 is double the height of the rest of the tiles. Let's open up the code And here they have the matte grid list set to the row height of 100 pixels, exactly what we're doing. And then within each of these matte grid tiles, you can set the column span and also the row span. If we take a closer look at the row span, open up the TS file and we'll look for the tiles array. And inside the tiles array, for each of our tiles, they're setting the rows. Tile 1 is 100 pixels, row 1. And then number 2, tile 2, is rows 2. So this should be 200 pixels. Each of these row 1s are at 100 pixels, and the reason for that is if we go back to the HTML, because this is set at 100 pixels. We'll do the same thing. Let's use this row span on tile 3 and 4 within our project. Back inside of our HTML, we'll update the tile 3 by adding the row span input, and we'll set this one to 2. So this tile should be double the size of 100 pixels, so it should be 200 pixels. And I'll also add that to tile 4. Then also let's update this to 150 pixels, actually give it some more room. So now 3 and 4 should be at 300 pixels as a height for each one. Let's see what that looks like in the browser. Now our first row has a height of 150 pixels. The second row has a height of 300 pixels. This looks pretty good. Before we actually start adding our content within these tiles, let's improve on these tiles a little bit more. For example, we can add gutters, and we'll do that. And also we could add headers for each one of our tiles by using the matte grid tile header element. Let's start on that in the next video.